Grab a spoon, grab a snack, and let's have a Cheerio chat. I'm Grandpa Pete, and for the next few minutes, let's you and I talk about what matters most.
Welcome to Cheerio Chat. I'm Grandpa Pete, and this is a conversation about what matters most. Today's story begins with a curious coincidence. Two men named Rodney, living on opposite sides of the Atlantic, both burdened by serious illness, and both connected in very different ways to the outcome of the American Revolution. One was Caesar Rodney of Delaware, an American patriot suffering from severe illness affecting his face and jaw. The other was Admiral Sir George Bridges Rodney, a highly capable British naval commander whose painful urinary illness forced him to leave the West Indies at a crucial moment. This is not a story about saying that illness alone determines history. History is always more complicated than that. But it is a story about the way one person's physical suffering, one difficult decision, and one moment of perseverance can affect events far beyond what anyone can see. Let's begin with Caesar Rodney. In the summer of 1776, the delegates in Philadelphia were deciding whether the American colonies should declare independence from Great Britain. Delaware had 3 delegates: Thomas McKean, George Reed, and Caesar Rodney. But Caesar Rodney was not in Philadelphia when the vote approached. He was back in Delaware, carrying out military and public responsibilities. That left Delaware divided. Thomas McKean favored independence. George Reed opposed it. Their votes canceled each other out. Then came the urgent message. Caesar Rodney was needed in Philadelphia. Rodney was not a healthy man. He had long suffered from asthma and from a severe cancerous condition that affected his face and jaw. Earlier treatment had left him badly disfigured. Yet, when he learned that Delaware's voice might be split at this decisive moment, he set out from Delaware for Philadelphia. He rode nearly 80 miles through the night in rain and stormy weather, arriving in time to cast Delaware's vote for independence on July 2nd, 1776. That vote mattered. The colonies wanted unity. A declaration of independence would be dangerous enough. A declaration marked by open division would have been still more dangerous. With Rodney present, Delaware voted in favor. South Carolina changed its position, and Pennsylvania also came around. New York still abstained for the moment, but no colony voted against independence. Caesar Rodney did not create the revolution by himself, but on that night, his willingness to endure discomfort and danger helped give the cause of independence a united front. Now let's cross the Atlantic and go forward 5 years. In 1781, the American Revolution reached a decisive military campaign at Yorktown, Virginia. General George Washington needed more than soldiers on land. He needed the French Navy to prevent the British Army under Lord Cornwallis from escaping or receiving reinforcements by sea. And in the Caribbean, one of Britain's greatest naval commanders was Admiral Sir George Bridges Rodney. Rodney was formidable. He had a reputation for boldness, experience, and tactical skill. The British Navy had every reason to trust him in the West Indies. But Rodney was ill. Historical medical accounts describe him as suffering from a serious urinary condition, likely involving severe obstruction or bladder stones, though modern physicians cannot diagnose an 18th century patient with absolute certainty. Rodney repeatedly asked to return to England because the strain of command and his illness were becoming too much. In the summer of 1781, he did return to England for treatment. That decision had consequences. Rodney's replacement in the Caribbean was Admiral Sir Thomas Graves. When the French fleet under Admiral de Gosse sailed north to support Washington's campaign against Cornwallis, Graves failed to defeat it at the Battle of the Chesapeake. The French fleet controlled the entrance to Chesapeake Bay. Washington and the French army trapped Cornwallis by land. Cornwallis could not be rescued by sea, and in October 1781, he surrendered at Yorktown. Yorktown was the last major battle of the Revolution. Peace negotiations followed, and American independence was ultimately recognized. Now, we should be careful here. We cannot say with certainty that if Admiral Rodney had remained in command, Britain would have won at the Chesapeake. History does not give us a second chance to run the experiment. But Rodney later defeated de Grasse at the Battle of the Saints in 1782. That later victory shows why historians and medical writers have reasonably asked the question, could a healthy Rodney made a difference in 1781? Perhaps. And perhaps that is the lesson. Caesar Rodney was sick, but he rode toward responsibility. George Rodney was sick, and he stepped away from command for treatment. Neither decision was simple. Neither man's health was a matter of weakness or failure. Both were human beings facing real physical limits. Yet their circumstances became part of a much larger story. So, what matters most in these two stories? Perhaps it is this. We may not control our circumstances, but we can still choose how faithfully to meet them. Caesar Rodney could not control his illness. He could not make the road shorter. He could not make the rain stop. But he could decide whether to answer the call. Admiral Rodney could not simply will his physical pain away. His illness was real. His departure was understandable. Yet his absence reminds us that each person has a place, and sometimes the consequences of a person's presence or absence are larger than anyone realizes at the time. Our lives may not involve a vote for independence or the fate of a fleet, but every day we are given smaller versions of the same question. Will I show up? Will I do the difficult thing that needs doing? Will I encourage someone, make the call, take the trip, keep my word, or be present when I am needed? We often do not see the significance of ordinary faithfulness while we are living it, and that is what matters most. Now, I'd like to hear from you. Has someone in your life shown up in a difficult moment, despite illness, inconvenience, fear, or exhaustion? Maybe it was a parent who kept caring for the family, a teacher who encouraged you, a friend who came when you needed help, or perhaps it was a moment when you almost decided not to do something, but you did, and later realized it mattered more than you knew. Share that story. Those are the toppings that make this conversation richer.
And now it's time for the toppings, the part of Cheerio Chat where you add your thoughts to the bowl. I told you my thoughts, and now I would like for you to share with me what matters most to you about the story you heard today. Contact me at CheerioChatPodcast@gmail.com.
I just wanted to share with you a feedback I received from my granddaughter Elisa, who says that after listening to the recent podcast, she says, quote, "I just want to create as much as possible and spend time on what matters most." That's what makes these podcasts so satisfying, when I hear from anybody that's listening. And it's particularly happy for me to hear from Elisa about her spending more time creating, because she is a very creative person. And it's wonderful to know that in some very small way, I'm sure, I help encourage her in her creativity.
Well, your bowl is probably empty by now. Thank you for joining me for Cheerio Chat. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thinking about what matters most. Cheerio Chat was hosted by Peter Giles and produced by Tater Giles. It is sponsored by Digipix.com, who can help you preserve your videos, your photos, your stories, and whatever matters most to you. One of my favorite parts of eating a bowl of Cheerios is the milk that's left behind. It's no longer just milk. It's been changed by everything that came before. Stories are like that. If we pay attention, they leave something behind in us. Here's what this story has left with me.
What stays with me is that history is made by human beings, not statues, not names in textbooks, but people with illnesses, fears, limitations, responsibilities, and choices. Caesar Rodney rode through the storm while carrying pain that many people today would find overwhelming. Admiral George Rodney's painful illness may have removed one of Britain's most capable commanders from a decisive theater of war. One man's determination helped give the American cause unity. Another man's absence helped create an opening that Washington and his French allies were able to use. It reminds me that our weakness does not cancel our usefulness. And it also reminds me to have compassion. The people who shape history are rarely as invincible as they appear in paintings. Thank you for joining me for another Cheerio Chat. This week, when you face something difficult, remember Caesar Rodney riding through the rain to Philadelphia. And remember that every person you meet may be carrying a struggle you cannot see. Be faithful in the responsibility in front of you. Be compassionate toward the burdens others carry. And keep asking yourself, what matters most? My takeaway from this story is very personal. During the past 2 weeks, I have been recovering from prostate surgery, the same kind of challenge that Admiral Rodney was facing. And I can tell you, it was done with modern equipment, with a highly skilled surgeon, and it was something I hope I never have to do again. It was difficult. It was a challenge. And trying to come back from that and to heal myself and be able to start doing my podcasts again, that's a big deal. If I had to command a fleet of ships from a British bridge, I would have, I'm pretty sure, been able to figure out a reason to go to London and have what was a much more painful surgery than I had here in the Bay Area. And so it was personal. It made me really think about how remarkably fortunate it was that Admiral Rodney decided to get treatment at that very moment. If we care about the fact that the United States of America exists, and I very much do, and feel it's played an extremely important role in the modern world beyond anything even its founders could have projected, I find that Admiral Rodney going to London was, and may have been, at least, part of what George Washington meant when he said that the revolution had benefited from God's providence. Admiral Rodney's prostate problem may have been one example of God's providence removing from the opposition to American freedom the one commander that could have decisively defeated the French and been able to relieve and reinforce Admiral Cornwallis. And the Battle of Yorktown could well have turned out differently, and more American lives would have been lost. The revolution may have eventually been won, but it would have come at an even greater cost. So, thank you, Caesar Rodney, for showing up to vote for independence. Thank you, Sir Admiral George Rodney, for not showing up and going to England to have your prostate cleared out so that you could live to fight another day. And I will just close this podcast with a happy birthday, number 250, to the United States of America, a country I love with all my heart.